What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Lore Reloaded channel. I am Lore Reloaded, your wondrous host, here to talk to you guys today about the Treaty of Algeron. But hey, if you've watched this before, you know how this works. I'm going to let people come in, let people start filtering in, and remind you of wonderful ways to check me out. Hey, if you want to know my opinions on things like what happened to Count Dankula, politics, or if you just want to share some lore and you want to talk about all kinds of geek stuff, check me out at twitter.com/lore reloaded. Of course, if you like and want to support this channel, the best way you can do that is going to patreon.com/lore reloaded. We're doing this geek breakdown on Thursday because I wasn't able to do it on Wednesday. One other thing I do kind of want to mention to you guys, two things that have come up, and I kind of just said it beforehand. First, a lot of people on Twitter, those I follow and those that follow me, have talked about what's been happening to Count Dankula. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's a user called Count Dankula who happens to be one of the most offensive people that you'll probably ever meet and doesn't care. He's a comedian. He goes out of his way to do offensive jokes and things of that nature. And he has been convicted of a crime because he made his pug do a Nazi salute while he said "gas the Jews" to annoy his girlfriend. And let me say this, I don't care why he was doing it, whether it was to annoy his girlfriend or just because he wanted to teach a pug to do that, or just because he loves saying it. I think it's horrific that that's happening to him in Scotland, and I stand behind him, and thank God I live in a country that has better free speech laws. Also, on a lighter note, I wanted to give a shout out to James from South Carolina. James is an awesome name, shares it with mine. That's my real name. James, if you want to know which one in South Carolina I'm talking about, you're going to be retiring in about a month, man. I wanted to say congratulations. I was told by a bird that you like the channel and you watch the channel, you'll be retiring. I just want to say congratulations, brother. I'll probably be doing it on an actual video too. With all of that out of the way, we got first super chat, haven't even started, guys. Super chat. Shout out to Laughable Larry. Thank you so much. Things like that are the reason the show is supported. And how I can continue to do this. I'm getting better equipment, doing this more. I'm doing it full time. It was in question if I would continue to do this, but because of super chats, because of Patreon, because of people like you watching, I'm able to continue to do that. Let's talk to some people, see what's going on. I don't know why my chat's messing up. David says, I can testify that Lore will converse over anything on Twitter. Generally will. Lore Reloaded, where is your editor? He's sleeping probably in my bed, most likely, if I had to guess. I showed a nice little video of me playing violin. Yeah, that was right. Lore Reloaded, good day. This will be an opportunity for me to learn more about the story lore. Looking forward to it. Hey, I'm looking forward to it with you too, brother. Hey, says Johnny Doe. We're already asked. Nate Watson, hi to yourself as well. There should be a way for me to pop this out so I can see you better, but for some reason it's not there. Intriguing. There it is. All right. Now I'll be able to see a lot better. Let's go ahead and just jump into it now. Now that we are, 4 minutes into it? The Treaty of Algeron. For those of you who don't know what the Treaty of Algeron is, it was an agreement between the United Federation of Planets and the Romulans. We don't know... Nice hair. Thank you, Johnny Doe. Thank you. I like my hair, too. We don't know exactly how the Treaty of Algeron came to be. There's no real alpha canon in it. It's mentioned a couple of times. It's mentioned in Enterprise, the last episode, and then it's mentioned in The Next Generation. It may have been mentioned in Deep Space Nine, but I don't think so. The Treaty of Algeron says this: Starfleet will not create a cloak, will not have the existence of a cloak, and the Romulans will go back to their own corner and stay away from Starfleet. There have been some books about it. Interesting. I haven't read it, but I looked into the research of the books for the lore on this, and apparently, according to one of the books, Starfleet intelligence made it to look like a Dodera Dexbird exploded, killed thousands upon thousands of Starfleet officers, bases across an entire sector and including a ship, and use that as a political ploy against the Romulans to make them back off. Again, I haven't read it, but I do think that it's interesting, and it makes me want to actually read the book. But to that notion, I am doing a video. I was going to do it today. I'll probably do it tomorrow. I was doing a video on the phase cloak. I had just watched the Pegasus, which is the episode from the Next Generation it comes from, and it was intriguing to me to consider the phase cloak as an option for the Federation. And let me put it out this way. Here's my thing. So the treaty at the time made sense. The Romulans, being manipulative, somewhat being trepidatious, wanted a way to have an edge on the Federation. And Starfleet and the Federation, being the Federation, simply just didn't want to have a war that they wanted to fight. They wanted peace. So, to that end, they agreed, we won't make cloaks, you won't go to war with us. Now, the Federation generally does what it says. Starfleet is not like any other government or organization. They are honest to a fault. If they say they're not going to do something, then them doing what they say they're not going to is an aberration. Most all of Starfleet does what they say. Starfleet officers are known for their honesty, as we see in Deep Space Nine. So they go and they make this phase cloak, which is evil because Starfleet isn't doing what Starfleet said it's going to do. But here's my question, and then I'm going to read some of your comments, and I want your interesting. The reason they agreed to this treaty was for Romulans to leave them alone. They didn't want a war. It makes sense. The Romulans have an advantage. At the time, the Klingon agreement or Klingon treaties, they weren't as close as we see in the TNG era. Then all of a sudden, we have a phase cloak. So not only does the Federation create a cloak, they create a better cloak, a better technology than what the Romulans have. And so at that point, while the Treaty of Algeron is nice, it is no longer necessary, in my opinion, because now we're on an equal basis. If the Romulans wanted to go to war, not only will we go to war, but we'll win a lot better because we have a better cloak than you. So should there have been a renegotiation of the Treaty of Algeron? And while I'm waiting for that to update with you guys, we got Laughable Lore throwing up another $5 again, making it so that I can continue to do this for the rest of my life. Lore, I've been waiting on this stream all day. Great Battlestar Galactica video too. It's awesome to see you do other lore besides Star Trek. Yeah, I put this on my community tab. By the way, guys, you should follow me on my community tab so you can get updates. I do 1 to 3 updates max a day. I'll start doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays non-Trek, and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I'll still do Trek. So you'll get majority of Trek stuff. The Lore channel, when I had 200 subscribers, did a different series every day. Now I know my lane. This is a Trek channel. It's going to be majority Trek. But I kind of don't want you guys to get bored or monotonous, so we're going to move away from that a little bit and have a little bit non-Trek on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Section 31, we're looking at you. I do think, and I agree, I think Section 31 was a part of this, and remind me of that in the end, because I think there's more to it. One of the interesting things is that we see a point of view that I don't think is whole in Starfleet. We see the point of view of the Enterprise, of Picard, who is a diplomat, who is largely pacifistic, who believes that the Starfleet is not a military. I think there are elements within Starfleet during the Next Generation era that don't agree with that. We just never really see them. And I think that, Picard's talking about all these bad things that are going to happen to the Admiral and other admirals and things. I don't think it's going to go like he said. I think they probably got off, especially since this is probably a Section 31 ordeal. But we'll get a little bit more into that. Ariel Ballet says, "Greetings, Lore Reload. Just subscribed to you last week. Thank you for subscribing. So far, I've enjoyed your channel. Hey, I'm here for you." The Mr. Pete channel says the answer is a Borg Oberth of Prey. Makes sense to me. Maybe the negotiation and diplomatic treaties are only as good as the honesty of both kinds. Romulans aren't trustable. I'm assuming you say trustworthy. You know, and I'd agree with that, and that's a part of my point here. The Romulans were obviously not paying attention to the Treaty of Algeron. They were at a minimum not keeping to the spirit of it by continually attempting to manipulate both the Federation and the Klingons. And they even went out of their way, like with Tomalak, attacked the Enterprise. Now, he could justify it, trying to say, you know, you're on the wrong side of the border. But the Treaty of Algeron, again, was effectively leave us alone. Imperious Gaming says, at Lore Reloaded, the Federation would probably destroy the Cloak since it was an illegal R&D project ran by a small group of Starfleet intelligence personnel. But should they have? Is the question. First off, I don't think they necessarily destroyed it. That unit may have been destroyed. I don't think that the Phase Cloak went away. I think that even if you had destroyed that one, you would have had more created, and Section 31 would have just went deeper within, or Starfleet Intelligence would have went deeper within. And I think we have evidence of that in Deep Space Nine. Remember, in Deep Space Nine, you would have Sloan appear just simply out of nowhere, like he just arrived there. The way he beamed on and off wasn't traceable. It seemed like he could appear anywhere at any time, and a Federation Phase Cloak would have made that very, very easy to do. And I think that while it's not seen in Alpha Canon, I think you can make an argument that it was still there and that they still continue to use Phase Cloaks. The Phase Cloak doesn't break the treaty. It's like a treaty say you can't make H-bombs, so you make fission bombs instead. Similar, but not the same. I don't know that I agree with that, Mr. Pete. I honestly, I can't say that I agree with that. At best, you're breaking the spirit of the law, again, like what the Romulans are doing, but it's a cloak. And the agreement was no cloaks. It's kind of like what they did in Discovery. Those were cloaks. They called them invisibility screens, but they were cloaks. So the fact that they hadn't seen cloaks is just ridiculous. And I think the same thing's here. I get what you're saying, but I just don't agree with it. Nate Watson in the house, $20. Thank you so much. Super chat. Diamanda Hagen's theory was the treaty blocks the Romulans from recreating Genesis in exchange for the Feds not developing cloaks, since Genesis can destroy planets, and someone with both would be unstoppable. Thoughts? Did the Romulans have the Genesis technology, though? Am I missing that? Was that it? I mean, it's possible that's in the movie. A lot of people, so, you know, it's interesting. A lot of people expect me to know everything about Star Trek and to remember everything. I consider myself quite knowledgeable, but, I mean, you know, I can be wrong on certain things. Like, for instance, Captain Adama is not Captain Adama, it's Commander Adama. I knew that. I did Trek so much that when I see someone captain a ship, I think Captain. Let's assume that it's right, though, that they had the Genesis technology. Yeah, Star Trek Movie 3. That's fine. I mean, you know. First off, you can't trust the Romulans. I don't know. I guess I could see the Federation or Starfleet doing that, saying you can't use the technology and we won't have cloaks. There's no evidence for that in The Next Generation, in Enterprise, or in Deep Space Nine. I didn't even think about it since you say Genesis. You know, you had to remind me. It's possible. The only thing is there would have to have been elements within Starfleet to say, you know, they're just going to blackmail us. They're going to continue doing it. If they're going to want cloaks, they're going to want us not to develop quantum torpedoes or what have you. When does it stop? They also don't... the Starfleet also doesn't bow to other organizations or other governments when they've made similar demands. So, I don't know. I don't know... I couldn't see it in the original series. I guess I'd have to relook up when the Treaty of Algeron happened, because if it happened during the original series era, no admiral is going to agree with that. They're going to tell the Romulans to get bent. But the Next Generation, pacifist era, I could see that at that point. But the more I think about it, that would have to be the original series, if not Enterprise, because this would have been recently after the war, the United Earth Romulan War. I could see the Next Generation era doing it. I don't think the original series era would do it. I don't think Enterprise era would do it. Discovery era, maybe, but I doubt it. Let's see. At Lore Reloaded, the Romulans didn't have the tech, but this was just her fan theory. Her theory was the treaty banned the Romulans from reverse engineering it. I don't know. I'm not even aware of the person you're talking about, so I'm going to have to look her up. I mean, maybe I've seen her, but the name doesn't ring a bell. At Lore Reloaded, regarding your comment with Section 31, as far as what is generally known about Section 31, we don't know the full technological and scientific capabilities of the organization. I agree. So we have to make inferences, and that occurs a lot in Trek. There are things they don't explain just because they have other parts of the show that they have to bring up. And it's just a theory. It's not alpha canon. I stated that. But when you look at what Sloan can do, when you look how he can get off and on without being detected, how he can just all of a sudden appear somewhere, we know that technology exists that allows you to do that. We know that the phase cloak allows you to go through objects, allows you to move without being seen. And it's a cloak that the quadrants at least weren't aware of beforehand, and so may not be looked for quite as often. We also know that it's possible to use transporter technology through shields and through longer distances. We see that with the Dominion. Is it possible that Section 31 had technology the Dominion did? Maybe. Though generally Deep Space Nine shields are down, so that wouldn't be as big of an issue. But it's something to consider. Does decades of peace, but at what cost? They were woefully unprepared for the Borg and the Dominion, says A.J. Jones. I agree. So here's the thing I enjoy about Star Trek, and I don't think that it was necessarily done on purpose, or at least a lot of it wasn't done on purpose. I think that a lot of it interweaves from the Next Generation into Deep Space Nine, especially, and even from Enterprise to the original series. And then from, again, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. Toss to TNG doesn't do that well. But you see seeds of different things. You see different things that coalesce together, like the phase cloak with Section 31 possibility, with Jellicoe. You see that these elements existed during the time, it's just they weren't the prominent ones. And as I have said, I do believe that Starfleet and the United Federation of Planets are pretty authoritarian on wrongthink. And so these ideas, until the Dominion War, would probably be very unpopular, so we don't see them a lot. And I think that a lot of the different threads interweave and can be brought together. Again, not alpha canon, we have to make inferences, but a lot of what we do is inferences anyway, right? No Stripe 361. With Section 31, I can see the upper echelons of Starfleet agreeing not to make certain tech for peace because they knew that Section 31 would research it for them. I agree. I think that Section 31 at this point was very, very prevalent. You had Starfleet Intelligence, the Admiral, the big dog who knew about this. You had Pressman, who's an admiral, I'm not sure. You had Starfleet Tactical, who was working on this. You had Starfleet Tactical, Starfleet Intelligence, Pressman. There's no way that the admiral for the Corps of Engineers didn't know about this, because this would take a lot of engineers to put together. And all of these working together in tandem, and it still being somehow secret, a small group, the only logical idea to pull from that is that Section 31 was working with them. And again, once it's all been made known, and all of this hoopla, I think Section 31 just went deeper. And that reminds me of something real quick. Picard is one of the biggest hypocrites on God's green earth. He is just horrifically hypocritical. If you remember, during the episode with Jellicoe, how they knew the Cardassians had something on that ship, and he chose not to do it. He chose not to scan them, even though he knew he chose not to scan them. At that point, he kept it secret. He didn't tell anyone about the Cardassians having weapons and staging for another attack on the Federation. He just said, we'll be watching. But all of a sudden, Pressman and this phase cloak, he decloaks right in front of a D'Deridex ship and tells the Romulan, the commander, hey, we're going to contact you because this all needs to be in the light. What kind of hypocrite? Honestly, if you're going to choose one empire not to go to war with, I would choose the Romulans. Between the Cardassians and the Romulans, I would not go to war with the Romulans. I would hide that from the Romulans and not the Cardassians. That's just me. Wow. Laughable Larry up in the house. The first $50 I think I've ever gotten straight. People combined have given $50, but thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. The phase cloak would have turned the Dominion War faster and possibly could have saved billions of lives. That's why in the future with Janeway, the shuttle she goes back in time with has a cloak. Does it have a cloak? I believe they realized the mistake they made. Huh. You know, I agree with that. And that's a good little piece of a plot hole, I think. Even if we assumed that all of the tech was destroyed. Oh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to use this Federation cloak. We're going to destroy it and never look at it again. You're telling me someone didn't say, hey, didn't we have a cloak that could go through material? Why don't we rebuild that? And use that, especially when they were about to be destroyed. And Laughable Larry, I agree, that's a good point. And I think it makes sense, and that's why it would have a cloak. I think it makes sense, and that's why it would have a cloak to it, because ultimately the Treaty of Algeron is from a time that the Federation and Starfleet don't have to worry about anymore. And I think you can make an agreement with the Romulans. I think you can come to a peace and still have a cloaking device. We know that it's out of universe that they don't have a cloaking device because we don't want them to be ultra mega whatever. But I think it would make sense that the Federation would have cloaks. I'm going to have to redo. I'm about to come out with the Borg War. That's a good point. I'm going to have to redo it now and include cloaks in that. Laughable Larry, thank you. I appreciate that. Lore Reloaded. Even if you want to be peaceful, the phase cloak... Oh, one thing before I take that. Also, we know that they really didn't care about the Treaty of Algeron all that much when the Defiant consistently used that cloak. I mean, consistently used that cloak against the law and against the wishes of the Romulan Star Empire. Even if you want to be peaceful, the phase cloak could be used on evacuation craft to protect civilians from the enemy attack craft. I agree. I think there's a lot of non-combat options with the phase cloak. And that may even be an agreement that I could see the Starfleet doing, saying, hey, we're going to have cloaks. This is going to happen. Neither of us want to have war. So how about we're going to take these cloaks. They will only be used in defensive situations. At Lore Reloaded, did I get a haircut? I did get a haircut. Sci-Fi, I have not received anything from you that I'm aware of. Send me an email, james@lorereloaded.com. Bashir, Nat Watson up in the house. Bashir pointed out that it would have taken like 70 people to infect Odo. What you're describing with a bunch of people being involved with a phase cloak is consistent with what we know about Section 31. Exactly, Nate. And that's why I'm more confident that Section 31 had something to do with this. Because of that episode. That was one of the episodes that came to mind. And it wasn't just that it was 70 people. It was the different divisions. And he brings it up a little bit. Doctors, admirals, Starfleet security, Starfleet tactical, Starfleet intelligence, Starfleet medical. It wasn't just the fact that it was 70 people. It was that it was 70 people higher echelon and down throughout the Federation, throughout Starfleet. people from all walks of life, especially something like Starfleet Medical, where the first thing that they're told is to do no harm. And they just committed genocide. Not only did they commit genocide, they also did it to someone who was backing Starfleet, to the one ally they had that was a changeling. And if they're willing to do that, they're more than willing to, I think, keep a phase cloak and keep it on the back end, in my opinion. Picard is the Ned Stark of Star Trek. Sisko knows how to play the game much better. I agree. I like Picard. Don't get me wrong. I like Picard. And I generally, well, I can't say generally, there's a lot of times that I like Janeway even. I like Picard. I like a lot of what Picard does. I like what Picard stands for. And I like what they were trying to do with Picard in that era. I think we need more of that now, actually. He just does things that he's not suited for, and he makes some stupid decisions, even though sometimes he does really well, like with Tomalak. He just makes some very stupid decisions. I said again, if you break the Treaty of Algeron, Romulans can do the same with the subspace weapon treaty. Is not that easy. Well, sure, but who's to say they're not going to do that anyway? I mean, look, if you can break a treaty, then they may break other treaties. But if a treaty is unfair and keeps you at a disadvantage, it's just not tenable, especially when you can make better technology. And the thing with subspace weaponry, even if they pulled out of them, that screws them as much as it does everybody else. Even if we assumed that they'd pull out of that treaty, subspace weapons aren't reliable, or not reliable, but aren't stable. They're just as likely to destroy you as anybody else. And once they begin, it's hard to stop them. And so it's more a mutually assured destruction thing. So I wouldn't be as worried about that. By the way, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you're watching this and you haven't, don't forget to like or dislike it. 105 people and only 29 upvotes and 5 downvotes. Come on, people, like it. Also, just to remind you guys, if you comment video on demand when this goes live, not right now, but when this goes live, when you comment, you have a chance to win a Galaxy-class starship from Eagle Moss, which is a wonderful company, might I add. I will be sending out, if you're in the United States, I'll definitely get it to you. If you're not, we can talk and see if I can. Outside of the United States, it's pretty hard, but I'll do what I can. If you're a patron for as low as $1 a month, you are entered to win an NX-01, which I think I have right here. Boom. $1 a month, patreon.com/lore reloaded. Same thing applies. When Picard decided to look away from the Cardassian weapon shipments, it reminded me of the appeasement the UK and France tried with Nazi Germany. Of that, I can agree. It's unfortunate it didn't go further than that. I think maybe you could argue that if they actually responded to that, we may not have had the Dominion War. It's somewhat of a stretch. But yeah, there was appeasement there. I really think the cloaking, just showing your cloak, was a form of appeasement too. There was very little reason for them to show the D'Deridax class what was going on. And I wouldn't have been surprised if the Romulan commander hadn't fired on the Enterprise and tried to destroy it. Andrew JR008, I cannot wait for the February Patreon shirt. That's coming along. I should be getting the picture back, I think, end of next week. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah. When Daniel shows Archer his time device, he mentions how they use time travel and cloaks to observe the past. So at some point, it's removed to use. So the Algeron's gone. Yeah, but we can't be sure that that Starfleet or the Federation exists after that. So Daniel's was really somewhat confusing, and they were vague on purpose. I don't know that Daniel's was a part of Starfleet. I don't know that Starfleet existed during the time that the time agents started working. I think it may have melded into something else. There's some illusion, because he's very vague. He never says Starfleet, and he says he works somewhat like that. AJ Jones, over 100 watching. Absolutely, guys. I love that we have these conversations. I am always excited to be on tonight, and I hate it when I can't make it because I love talking to you guys. An off-topic question. If you could design a uniform for Starfleet, would you go with a more practical and utilitarian approach like an Enterprise or the traditional style seen in TOS NG? It would be either Deep Space Nine. I like Deep Space Nine's Dominion War. Either that way, though no pockets doesn't make a lot of sense. Or I would do somewhere along the lines of Enterprise or maybe even Discovery. I know people are going to get upset about this. I don't hate Discovery's uniforms. And I like Enterprise's uniforms too. I think those make more sense. So I'd go Discovery, Enterprise, or Deep Space Nine if we had to have the no pockets. With the gray and then the color. Because really, the TNG era was just the best way to get people killed. If I'm fighting the Federation, I know I want to kill red shirts and yellow shirts. Because they're the threat. And I think it's harder to do in Deep Space Nine. The reason why Picard let the Cardassians off during the Wounded was because he had specific orders to protect the peace after the Battle of Wolf 359. The decision wasn't general. He went against all of his morals. He went against everything he believed in. And while I can understand the legitimate fear of not being prepared for a war with the Cardassians, it's appeasement at best and unnecessary at worst. The Federation could have still defeated the Cardassians. Future Janeway uses multiphasic torpedoes to obliterate the Borg. Seems like Starfleet redeployed the phase-shifting tech to weaponry. I would agree. We should bring up the Defiant, as it had a cloak that was on loan from the Romulans, says Epic 3. I actually already brought that up, but we can discuss that again. Yeah, I mean, the Treaty of Algeron really wasn't worth much during the Dominion War, because the Defiant used it all the time. In fact, I think it's worse than that. A lot of people get upset about this. I think it's a lot worse than that. Not only was the Defiant using the cloaking device, but they were using it during a time when the Romulans had a friendship, a treaty, an alliance. Yeah, you guys don't like it being an alliance. Rewatch In a Pale Moonlight. They say it specifically twice that the Romulans are allied with the Dominion. Now it's an alliance of mutual friendship, so it's not like the alliance like we think of, like a military alliance, but they still use the word alliance. And so if I'm the Dominion, I'm getting pissed off and trying to push the Romulans against the Federation, saying, look, you gave them a cloak, they're using that cloak against us. Why wouldn't we assume that you're okay with this? You're okay with them helping us out. Can you do something about that? Can you handle your house? If I was the Romulans, I would be pissed. I would demand to have that back. Because it would pull me into a war I don't want to be a part of. Let's see. Joshua Esch, I think the Romulans would keep the ban on subspace weapons since they are space-based equivalent of poison gas. They need subspace intact. Yeah, and as I said, it would just backfire. But they could use it to threaten. They could say, hey, we're pulling out of that if you try to get cloaks. Lore Reloaded from Munster8472. Could it be the phase cloak was just badly named and the device was just possibly made firstly to phase a ship and the cloak effect was just a side effect? Even if we take that, and I don't think so. I don't think it was badly named. Even if we assume that, it still has a cloaking ability, so it's still against the treaty. At Lore Reloaded, what do you think other captains would have done with the phase cloak in that episode? It depends on when and what era that it's occurring. So, for instance, I think Lorca would have used the hell out of the phase cloak, not cared, kept it off the books if he had to. I think that Kirk, during the Cold War, I think Kirk would have probably stood against it. And yeah, I know the captains, some of these eras, they didn't exist. Let's just assume it existed for the captain. Kirk would have probably been against it and not used it, but I don't think he would have went out of his way to show the Romulans and would have kept it under the radar. I think Janeway would have outright done the exact same thing Picard did, probably just more stupid in some way. Get a lot more self-righteous than Picard ever would have been, or ever was. Sisko, I think, would have not liked it and would have been against it. Not shown the Romulans, but stood against it before the Dominion War. Used the hell out of it during the Dominion War. Am I missing anybody? Archer. I don't know what Archer would have done. Something stupid. Probably would have done the same thing Picard did. Show the Romulans and then give it back. If the Romulans did not want to get drawn into the war, they maybe should not have tried to steal the Prometheus. Yeah, I don't know why the Starfleet didn't respond to that a lot harsher. Well, let me rephrase. So here's what I think happened with that. I actually do. I don't even know why I just said that. Here's my theory on that. Everyone knows that the Romulan Star Empire... everyone knows that the Romulan Star Empire wanted to... steal the Prometheus. And everyone knows that they sanctioned it. But when the Federation came out and said, hey, what the hell's going on? Romulan Star Empire probably said, rogue, no idea what's going on. Starfleet's in a war, and I'm not sure when Prometheus occurred, but it's in a war. It's either losing or has lost a lot of assets and doesn't have the ability to fight both the Romulans and the Dominion. So they probably let it go. Hypothetical situation. Romulan Star Empire versus Dominion. Who wins? Dominion. I think it'd be pretty easy for the Dominion to win. Lore. Given how easy most TNG-era ships find cloaks, it seems they have knowledge of how cloaks work well enough. Okay. Sure. Jackson Kennedy. What would you have done with the cloak? What would I have done? I would not have told the Romulan Star Empire. I would have had to think about it, honestly. There isn't some merit to the Treaty of Algeron keeping that and saying, let's not do cloaks. But the phase cloak is such a game changer that I'd have to better understand the intentions of the Admiral and of Starfleet intelligence. For me to be a part of it, though, I would have to say that at some point in the near future, it would have to come to light, and the Federation would have to come back to the table and say, hey, Treaty of Algeron isn't working for us anymore. We're going to make cloaks. This is happening. So let's find a better way to make this work. And then if they threaten to go to war, then you show them what you got. And you say, all right, we have this cloak. We can go through stuff. Not only can we do that, but we also have the Klingon Empire. You'd be fighting two governments that have cloak. Is this really what you want to do? A lot of people build up the Romulans, but they're a lot more bark than bite, especially in TNG era. I think they'd back off pretty quick. I think they'd use it to their advantage from a political standpoint. I think they'd try to steal the cloak, but they're not as warrior-like as people like to think. There's no alpha canon that supports that. Ever since the United Earth Romulan War, which was the really only major conflict, and they ultimately got the hell beat out of them, they more like to manipulate people to fight each other than to do actual fights. A lot of bark there, not a lot of bite. Nate Watson, you forgot my favorite captain, SF Debris. Parody Janeway. If you haven't seen SF Debris, he's hilarious. He's one of the inspirations for this channel. You should go watch all of his reviews in Star Trek. It's just wondrous. How would she handle the phase cloak? She would take the phase cloak and destroy Romulus and find a way to blame it on like the Hobos accident or whatever, and find a way to blame it on the Klingons, take over the Romulans, and then work from there to then take over the Federation. That is exactly what Evil Janeway would do. At Epic says, I'm reminded of something Quark said during his talk with the Vulcan. Attacking only makes peace cost more to obtain, so why was the cloak something the Romulans wanted banned? Yeah, I mean, I like Quark's way of looking at it. When both sides are equal, or when both sides seem to have an advantage, then peace is at a premium. Everybody wants peace because no one wants to die, generally. And so there's a lot of good conversation. But the more you fight, the more one side loses and one side wins, or the more you destroy each other, the higher the cost of peace. And, the Romulans wanted that advantage because it made them feel better. And Starfleet just didn't want to fight. And that's what that came down to. A Church Nexus, I think that's Australian, $5, knocking it out of the roof, saying Section 31 is a dangerous organization. Sheer Doctor is a dummy to try to go versus it. Section 31 is a dangerous organization. Bashir, the Doctor, is dumb to try to go against them. Yeah and no. I think it's interesting that a group of Starfleet officers might try to go against Section 31. And I don't think Section 31 would be as cloak and dagger and just off them instantly. Because they're fighting for people like that. But I think ultimately it would lose. I don't think Star Trek Online's what am I looking for? Not timeline. Star Trek Online's story about what happens to Section 31 is very realistic. At Lore Reloaded, something that makes Alderaan less of a disadvantage is that it has little clear strategic advantage. Redemption suggests a good sensor net would detect a fleet. Yeah, the problem with that is you're working in 3D space, though. Yes, so not only does they have the sensor net where they can detect it, we know the listening outposts at both the Klingon border and the Romulan border can pick up cloaked ships. So we know the Federation has technology and bases that will detect what's incoming. So it's not that they can't detect them, it's just that it's hard, especially if it's just one ship and it's not a base. Where was I going with that? So yeah, but I mean, they still like it because, again, one-on-one ship fights and things like that, it is a clear advantage. I mean, look at yesterday's Enterprise. The ability to cloak, attack, and then come back, or the Battle of the Gagarin, the destruction of the Gagarin in Discovery. One-on-one ship fights, or even fleet ship fights, it's very advantageous, even with the ability to detect it to a degree. Lore Reloaded, a one-sided treaty to develop cloaks is like the USSR or USA decided not to develop nukes or STI against a first strike and allowing the other side to do so. Yeah, I agree, but it's very Starfleet. See, that's the thing. Starfleet isn't like any other military organization. They keep what they're about to say, and they assume that everybody's going to play by their rules. And so they're more interested in peace and not fighting than they are winning. And so a fan said this, and I think it's a great way, and I think it's in one of the Fossa books. But the way the Federation diplomacy works is to make your attack, and this is me paraphrasing what they said, make your attack fatal. And then make your attack fatal, and what was it? Oh man, I'm going to butcher this. Make your attack fatal, always be and make sure that you can always counterattack. Basically, make it so that if someone attacks you, they're going to regret it. And the second piece is make it so that you can survive their first attack. Make them attack first, but make them regret it. That's very consistent with all of Alpha Canon. The Klingon-Cardassian War, the Klingon Federation War, the Cardassian Border Wars, arguably the Dominion War, the Klingon Cold War, the Discovery, the first Klingon Federation War, even though that's poorly done, still technically. Yeah. David Roebuck, love your videos, Laura. You read people's thoughts even if they don't pay. Keep going like that. What does the shirt say? Oh, this is Firefly. It's an old Firefly shirt. Or, yeah, from Serenity. But, Yeah, I mean, the channel's a conversation. I always had my... I always promised myself if I ever became large, I would still treat the channel like I was small. And I can't do that as much. If you guys notice, I don't respond to you like I used to, and I wish that I could. I try to respond to comments when I can, and this has always been a conversation, and the channel always will be a conversation. And so, as long as I'm in control of the channel, it'll always be that way. And regardless of what that means, if that means I grow, great. If that means I lose subscribers, great. Let's see. How does the Federation survive with no internal currency? Well, easily. They live in a... I don't know if it's a communistic utopia, but they live in a utopia without need, without scarcity. So they don't have to have it. And so it's easy when you have... it's really easy when you have replicators that make everything, right? I mean, why would you need to do that? Awesome response, says Jimmy1985, twice. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. If you didn't mean to send it twice, let me know, and I'll shoot you back the money via PayPal. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. What did the Federation get out of the treaty exactly? No war. That's what Federation wants. Federation, and you see it when the Eddington versus Cisco. Post-scarcity is the word I was looking for. Yes, post-scarcity, they don't need anything, so they don't need currency. We live in scarcity. That's why we need capitalism, or we need Marxism, or we need socialism, or whatever you want to use, because we can't just instantly make stuff. When you instantly make stuff, currency is no longer necessary. The Federation is willing to... Cisco and Eddington have this conversation, and they're talking about the Maquis, and Cisco says, you wanted war instead of an uncomfortable peace. And the Federation is willing to have uncomfortable pieces that is tactical disadvantages to them over war. They would rather have a fight. They would rather have peace and lose stuff, and lose land, and lose... technology that they could have than go to war. They want everyone to be at peace with each other. And that's very Gene Roddenberry. That's very pacifistic. But it's not very smart. The Phase Cloak would have made Voyager's journey a lot easier. Also, if the Borg assimilated the Cloak, it would have been horrible. So, yes, Phase Cloak would have made Voyager's... travel easier. By the way, so would the Spore Drive, which technically still exists as of right now. But the Borg arguably had cloaking devices. They assimilated Romulan technology. They assimilated Klingon technology, and even before the Best of Both Worlds, they assimilated several different colonies from the Romulans. So they should have had or known about cloaking technology. They just never use it. There's a couple of reasons why people think they never use it, which is their mentality of not needing it, because they are the Borg. They arrive, they come at you, they take what they want, and they leave. They don't need tactics necessarily. So there's no use for a cloaking device. It's inefficient. But there's no alpha canon specifically why they don't use it, but they would have had that technology already. Imperious, going to have to go for a little bit, going to get some food. Hopefully I'll be back before the stream ends. It's probably going to end pretty quickly, but hopefully you come back too. Old Fire Master, I missed it, but what you just said, you remember when I responded to every one of them? Man, I feel bad. The fact, if you go and you look now, there's like 100 comments I haven't responded to. I feel bad about that. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. And he doesn't come here a lot anymore. But there's a guy who was around who was my 200th subscriber, still subscribed, but he more likes Doctor Who and stuff. And still talk to him ever so often. It's cool that, you know, people grow with the channel. I really like that. I wonder if the Romulans wanted the Feds to not make cloaks out of fear that the Feds make better ones Phase Cloak is better than normal ones. Romulan cloaks have many shown weaknesses. Such fear would be justified foresight. And they wanted that tactical advantage, as I said. I think they do know that they can be out-teched by Starfleet. That's been proven time and again. Plus, they just want the tactical advantage. And I think that having that tactical... It's like when a kid needs a little teddy bear to make them feel better. The cloak for the Romulans is a teddy bear. And again, guys, you guys are continuing to give super chats, and it's just amazing. I'm getting audio equipment, new computer, as we've discussed. I'm starting to plan for next year so that I can go to conventions. I'm going to let you guys know about it, and if you're close, maybe we'll go have lunch or something, or come to a convention. I would love to take this on the road. And, as I stated, within the next year, I'm going to be doing this a lot more, 5 to 9, so my videos are going to get tighter. I'll have less errors. They're going to look better, and it's all because of you guys. Because I can justify this as a real business, it's all because of you guys and what you're doing. Hey, Lore, if the Spore Drive is alpha canon, you'd think Voyager would try to remake it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I was Janeway, when I became Admiral and realized the Spore Drive had existed, I would be so furious. Absolutely furious. Jonathan Slavey, I'm not going to use Intel. I can tell you that. When putting the computer together, because this one is on its last legs, I won't use Intel at all. Will never buy an Intel product as long as I live. Not in my house. Yes, you're right. In DS9 Federation was bargaining, trading land, and it looked like a great deal. Cisco would have taken the deal. Dr. Bashir and his enhanced buddies like he figured it out. Yeah, they were willing to do a lot. The Federation did not like war. We have no idea what the Romulans gave up in the treaty. For all we know, they agreed to abandon research on protomatter or metaphasic weapons. Yep, I mean, possibly. I mean, maybe they agreed that they wouldn't research magical unicorns that could hop from planet to planet without the use of warp drive. And we're on the cusp of getting these magical unicorns, and it stopped. So, I mean, anything's possible. Potshots aside, yeah, we don't know what they did. We have some inference. We have some inference on why they would not have done it. And a lot of that is for land and for war. But you're right, we don't know completely. Continuous tricks from the Romulan over the century probably invalidated the treaty in spirit. So, DV, you got a great point, and I brought that up. And I hope my video goes live tomorrow, because I'm doing a video on this, and you guys got to watch, regardless of what we talk here. The Romulans never paid attention to that in spirit. No matter what else the Treaty of Algeron agreed to, we do know, based on inference and what's said, that they agreed to go back and stay in their own part of the sector. And they didn't do that. They caused all kinds of issues, Klingon Civil War, and stealing of the Prometheus, and this, that, and the other. But that goes back to Starfleet. They never outright broke it, as far as we know, in the Treaty of Algeron. They just in spirit. And I think, and Starfleet is okay with that. Starfleet is okay if you break the rules in spirit. Look at the with the Maquis and the demilitarized zone. 9 ways from Tuesday, the Cardassians were breaking that consistently. The Cardassian Union was giving military-grade weapons to the settlers. They were just doing it via a third person. Starfleet set back on its laurels because they weren't outright doing it, and was okay with it. And that's just the way Starfleet is. Starfleet is more than willing to let people get away with stuff far past what they should have. The destruction of the Odyssey should have put everybody on alert, and the mining of the wormhole should have began at that point. Someone, I forget who, I'm sorry, it passed too fast. Question is, why am I going Ryzen, not Intel? Why won't I ever buy Intel? I don't really want to get into it. Political reasons. Intel decided to make a couple of decisions that were, in my opinion, anti-consumer base, anti-free speech, and pro-censorship, and pro the destruction of gaming. And so I will never buy another Intel. If that means I don't have a computer, I won't have a computer. I won't buy an Intel product at all. Maybe Janeway knew of the Spore Drive, and that's why she got so mad at the Equinox Ghetto Spore Drive, because somehow they figured it out. Maybe. I love the never-ending self-replicating mind. Yeah, so that's another thing. The self-replicating minds are magic. They're just as magic as the prophets. And so when people get upset about the Deus Ex prophets that occurs in the Bajoran wormhole, but not the self-replicating minds, it's effectively the same thing. They're both. One is just tech magic, so technomancy, and the other is magic. Now, I will say there is an argument that the self-replicating minds are more consistent with the world of Trek. And I think that's a valid argument to say, hey, the self-replicating minds are more tech. That's what we know. It's science fiction with a focus on science. Whereas the prophets are more Q-like. They're more science fantasy. And while there are beings like the Q, the Organians, and things like that, you have more science fiction than you do science fantasy, and it is a cop-out. Tim M., do you like SF Debris or heard of him? He's an inspiration for the channel. I've talked about him multiple times. If you've watched my Defiant episode, I call it Cisco's Pimp Hand. That obviously is an SF Debris reference. Love SF Debris. I've talked to SF Debris. Think he's a good guy. Bit off topic. What do you think would happen if the scenario of the Borg versus the Empire? I think the Borg would ultimately win, though the Empire would put up a hell of a fight. I think the Empire doesn't fight like the Federation or anything else, but I think once you start assimilating technologies and the Borg cube, I think it's not. There's no argument there. I do have a problem with the prophets because the Bajoran belief in them was a consistent plot point. I don't have a problem. I was about to say, that doesn't make any sense. I don't have a problem with prophets. Sure. Self-replicating minds don't fit in with canon. There have been many references to not being able to replicate certain complex pieces of machinery. I never thought of that. I mean, maybe they came up with something that could, but I never thought of that. So that's a good point. How would the Dominion do against the Empire then? That would be a better fight. I think the Dominion would probably win, given their resources, their abilities, and the Jem'Hadar, especially since the Jem'Hadar can actually hit something. If the Organians interfered in the Federation-Klingon War, why didn't they interfere in the Dominion War? 14 KLM, why didn't they interfere in the Klingon-Cardassian War? Why didn't they interfere in the Klingon-Federation War, both the first and the second one? Why didn't they interfere in the Cardassian border wars? They're obviously a plot device. That said, if I was to try to bring it in, I would say the Organians probably gave their best shot with the Federation and the Klingons, and that made the original series interesting, because the Federation and the Klingons, since they couldn't outright fight each other, would try to maneuver each other, which was very interesting, and it added some interesting episodes. So I liked what they did with the Organians, but I think the Organians had their best shot with the Federation Klingons. It didn't work, and they realized that these corporeal beings have to learn on their own what to do and what not to do. Rom took over as Grand Nagus, right? That is correct. Wasn't he starting to push Ferengi Alliance towards the Alpha Alliance to fight them against the Dominion? The Ferengi actually joined the Starfleet Alliance, or Federation Alliance. It was towards the end of the war, but we know that they actually already had joined the Federation and sided with them. Rom was pushing for more of the equal rights and the liberal utopia that you see in the Federation. So that was more his claim to fame. Trip out. What if the Mirror Dominion was a benevolent power? Darren Wagner, if you haven't seen it, I did a mock Terran Empire Dominion War video. And it's on the channel. And actually, the Dominion is the benevolent one in that trailer. And ironically, I have the Terran Empire who dominated the Borg and turned them into the Borg. The Borg were actually like the Borg collective. They were like, not the collective, they were like the cooperative. And the Terran Empire had attacked the Dominion, used a virus to turn them into the collective, and we're using the collective to fight the Dominion. And I have it's like a 2-minute clip, but it's a trailer that I did just to have some fun with. As far as basic replicators not being able to replicate certain things, I believe the industrial replicators could be used to create complex things and weapons. That's not consistent in the next generation. In the next generation, they do say there are things that cannot be replicated. Absolutely cannot. Certain devices. Now, they did this for plot so that you couldn't fix it, but they specifically said that. That there were things that absolutely could not. No replicator could do it. I don't have a problem with religions. People are going to believe what they will regardless of logic or not. Anyway, I didn't come here to... Epic, who are you talking to? What are you guys talking about? David? What's going on, buddy? Oh, you guys are talking about the religion and Bajorans and things. I'll say this about Deep Space Nine. The next generation was... I'm always open to ideas being challenged. I like anybody having any idea put up for debate. I don't think people should be restricted in what they say. The next generation was very close-minded with religion and called it idiocy. And Deep Space Nine, I think, did a better job in presenting both sides when it came to religion and atheism, or secularism, or whatever you want to call it. And I think that discussion should be had, and it's okay to have that discussion. And I think that ideas should be put up against each other. And I think that it does it well in Deep Space Nine, in my opinion. Daniel Bertazon, it's your birthday? Well, happy birthday, bud. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here, to wish you a happy birthday. That's why I did this. So everybody say happy birthday to Daniel. And cool on Star Wars DVDs. Yeah, so I'm going to be ending fairly shortly, guys. The Bajoran religion is interesting to me because depending on where you come out on religion, I think you could see it both ways. I think you could see the Bajoran religion being an actual religion, being something real and tangible. Or I think you could see how people could be manipulated. And I think you could get both messages from Deep Space Nine. And that's why I think it's a very interesting conversation. Picard was a borderline militant atheist when it comes to religious matters. Absolutely. I would say he was a militant atheist, definitively, from multiple episodes. But Who Watches the Watchers, I think it was Who Watches the Watchers, is the primo to look at. But I think he overall was very militant in his atheism. The series finale of Deep Space Nine made me cry. Best finale is the Star Trek series. Cool. I'd love to see the post-Janeway weekend Borg got conquered by the Founders, who then returned to slap down the Alpha Quadrant. I never thought of that. That would be intriguing. For those who don't know, I'm putting together a series where the Borg post-Nemesis attack the Alpha Quadrant. All-out war. And one of the issues I have is the Dominion response. I've gone back and forth on that. Who Watches the Watchers did not have Starfleet cloaking devices. Nope. Star Wars Galactic Empire versus the Terran Empire from the... I don't know. That'd be an even matchup. I don't necessarily like doing crossovers like that just because the tech is so different and the tech changes. Like, for instance, we now know that Klingon technology, most likely Federation technology, in the 21st to 22nd century can destroy planets easily. Before, that had been a big point of contention when you looked at Empire versus Federation. And because tech changes so much and the technology doesn't coalesce, it's hard to kind of place those against each other. Lore Reloaded, why don't the Borg use cloaks? Because we don't really have an alpha canon reason. I kind of discussed this, but I believe that one of the reasons would be because they don't believe they need it, because they work like a computer. They show up and they assimilate. That's what they do. And so they're the Borg. They don't have a reason for that. Borg versus Equestria. I need to do a crossover like that. By the way, guys, this is far off, but I have, for the last 10 years, done Extra Life. I kind of pride myself on the ability of how much I've raised, and it's for my local children's hospital. And this children's hospital means a lot to me. They saved my nephew who had cancer, and they did a lot for him. And the adult wing, so it's not the children's hospital, but their adult wing equivalent, was there and for my family when my mom died. And so I love raising money for them. That's going to be like in November or something, so I'm going to be doing a raise for that. And just to let you know, I'm kind of seeding it right now. I'm going to match dollar for dollar up to $500 every donation we get, and all super chats will go towards it during that time. And I'm going to donate a third to a half of everything I make that month. So looking forward to that. It's a long ways off. I know everyone's going to forget it by then, but happening in November. I'll be streaming 24 hours. It'll be a lot of fun. I'll be playing games then. Let's see. All right, guys. Do you have anything else? We're going to be I'm going to be ending it very shortly. So if you have any questions or anything you want to do, if Thursdays are better for Geek Breakdowns, because it seems like we have more people here than I do on Wednesdays, then I'll just move it to... Well, no, I can't move it to Thursdays. Never mind. But if you want me to do others other than Wednesday, then I'd be happy to move it. If a lot of people want Thursdays, I'll see what I can do. I have a commitment every Wednesday night, but I think I can move it. Remember Trials and Tribulations. What would you do if you added Dominion into the plot? I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. Nate Watson, the Bajoran religion wasn't a massive leap, plus more small steps than most Earth religions. They had orbs and accurate prophecies. The religion involved faith, but only small to moderate levels. Thoughts? I like the way the Bajoran religion was done. I like the way the Bajorans handled the Bajoran religion. I agree, there's a lot more reason to believe in the Bajoran religion in that series than necessarily Christianity or any religion on Earth right now. Because you have the orbs, you have the prophecies, you have tangible things that isn't just a connection with God, which is what's required for all religions on this planet. And I really like the episode where a Weyoun had defected. So I like Kira's opinion on this. So a Weyoun had defected from the Dominion, and Odo went and picked him up, and they're trying to escape. And the Dominion's trying to kill them, to destroy them. And this Weyoun is about to give all of the information up. And so in order to save Odo, the Weyoun gives his life. And he looks up and he says, and this is paraphrasing, it's going to be wrong, but he says something akin to, are you proud of me? Are you happy? Are you glad of everything I did? And he's begging Odo for like this absolution. And so Odo gives it to him, and he seems very content, and he dies just happy. And so Odo is relating this to Kira. And I really liked Kira... I really like Kira's response, because Odo's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Give me your blessing is what he said. Okay. And Odo gives him his blessing. And so Kira and, Odo's like, I feel uncomfortable about this. I'm obviously not a god. I don't think I did anything for him. And Kira says, she says, no. She says, he looked up into his God's eyes. He looked up into what he believed was his God's eyes, and his God gave him absolution, gave him a blessing. And that's not nothing. You gave something that was very kind, and you gave something that completed him. And I think it shows a lot about the Bajoran faith, that they're okay. First off, they're okay with someone else believing that other gods exist and that perhaps they might be gods. And she understood that the prophets are gods, but they might still have equals or peers, or they might not look at themselves like that. And arguably, the prophets are small g gods. You guys have heard me and Anti-Trekker talk about that. And I thought that was very profound. And I think, because you watch, when Starfleet is mainly secularist, especially Terrans. And so you watch, that's from The Next Generation on. The original series is different, but from The Next Generation on. And so you watch Sisko go from secularists, from calling them wormhole aliens, to becoming a devout believer, to becoming the Moses, and even making other Starfleet officers uncomfortable. And you see the good and the bad of that. There are episodes where he completely denies his family and puts his life in danger unnecessarily for his faith, and just leaves like Jake Sisko, just devastated. And then there are points where that faith gives him a completion, a confidence that you can't have if you have no belief. And so it's interesting. I think it does it very well. And I think that regardless of what you believe, you can see the positives of the other side, and I do think it speaks to both sides. Okay, you guys are probably getting really mad at me now. There was a CGI trailer for a proposed film called Bring Back Kirk, in which Kirk and Spock go into the wormhole and convince Sisko to come back. I know they did a comic on that where you have Sisko, Q, Kirk, JJ versus Kirk, and Spock team up. I haven't seen that specifically. I was wondering what you thought of the first episode of Krypton. I haven't seen it, 14 Caleb. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not huge on prequels like that since I know what happens. If you'd like me to, I'll watch it, but I haven't. I'm also not impressed with the series Supergirl. I think that's what it's called. So that's kind of turned me off to a lot of that. Yes, that's my point. Most Earth religions are very faith-oriented. The Bajoran religion requires less, kind of like the fuel requirements of semi or smart car. So we won't get into this too much because that's outside the scope. But since we brought it up, since we're talking about religion, I agree. I think the one thing that neither side in real life are willing to give to each other is what is required of faith. So where I grew up and where I live now, very much Christian. I live in the Bible Belt. And so it's hard for atheists to understand what being a Christian really is for most Christians. Christians believe that they have a connection with God, that God has infused them, and that it's a personal relationship. And that is hard for someone who's never believed to understand. And I think a lot of Christians, especially where I live, don't understand that belief is not a choice, generally. And that even if you wanted to, if deep down something tells you it doesn't exist, then that's just the way it is. You can fake it until you make it, but ultimately, it's hard to go there. And so I think both sides just aren't willing to give what they are. And I don't think it's unreasonable to think you have a connection with a God. Even if you don't believe there isn't a God, to think you have a connection with God, the way humanity works, the way our brains are, the tribalistic nature, someone who believes they have a connection with God isn't necessarily stupid. And I think that atheists do themselves a disservice by calling them stupid or by just out of hand doing it. I don't want to get into the debate all that much. If you guys want to comment on that, you can, but we're going to move further away from that. But to bring it back into circle, the Bajorans, as I just pointed out, do have a lot more to believe in. I think the Dominion has a lot more there to believe in. So I don't think it's unreasonable for the Terrans to come to the conclusion in the Star Trek universe that there is no God, based on their history. But yeah. Darren Wagner's messing with you, David Roebuck. Are there flat earthers in Star Trek? There are not flat earthers. But yeah, alright, so we're going to be ending it there. What are your ideas for the Dominion in your Borg Return series? I'm going to end it with that. What do I think is going to happen with the Dominion? I think the Dominion initially are going to help out the Federation and the Alpha Quadrant powers, especially since they're now under Odo. I think that they're going to make a push in, and they'll probably assist, if for nothing else, self-preservation, because if the Alpha Quadrant falls, so will the Gamma Quadrant. My problem or issue is after or during, if they do a coup to gain a standing within the Federation territory. Because I think there's an argument that even with Odo, they would still do that. So I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. Let me know when it goes live. I think we're going to end it there. So we're about to have my ending and the creepy stare at the end so I can ensure you get it. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching this. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. And I am going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded.